So, welcome again, like I just mentioned, to Scrapbook Live. This is Megan Jax, and I am here. We're going to put together 3 borders today for the November 30th. We always do borders on the last Wednesday of the month. There'll be a slight shift to that in December, but we're not to December yet. We still have one finish out today, and then tomorrow, hello Christmas, right? So today's Scrapbook Live, like I mentioned, we're doing borders. And the borders that I've chosen, you can see them in the handout. They are from the Creative Memories blog. I give you the date of the blog post, and there is a little QR code down here. And I will also tell you these 2 of the borders are in the 110 scrapbooking border ideas and sketchbook. If you got that as part of the birthday bonus, 2 of them are in here. One of them is not. And I'm going to give you a little secret about this sketchbook before we go too far into today. Lots of beautiful ideas in here, but I'm going to tell you something. There is 110 ideas in here, but there's like a million of them on the blog. So when you're in here and you're looking at your sketchbook, what I want you to do is you can go to the Creative Memories blog and you can search for that collection name. They tell you the name of the collection. You can see here, this one is called Deep in the Woods, this border right here. So what you can do is go to the blog, in the search bar, type Deep in the Woods borders and see if that pulls it up for you. And what you're going to find is they give you one border here, but there's probably at least 2 more ideas on the blog. That blog post with the border, that border also has 2 more ideas with it. So if you're using Deep Woods, you'll be able to see some other great ideas for Deep in the Woods. Or like I show you, you can do any of these sketches with any of the collections if you're just looking for the measurements. Typically the blog post will have those specific measurements on there. All right. So let's dive into today. I'm going to switch you over to my desktop and you will see what we've got going. All right, so I have the 3 borders that I picked out for you today. The first one is based on a It's Fall, Y'all border, and it was published on September 20th of 2021, so just over a year ago. And if you have the sketchbook, you can write down, this is the this border you can find on page 49 of your sketchbook. And I do have that QR code that should link you to the blog post. If that for some reason doesn't work for you, you would just look for the September 20th, 2021 blog post. But here's the directions for this particular sketch. Quickly, as I'm just telling you the other ones, the second one we're doing from June 29th of 2020 is on page 38. You can find that on the page 38 of your sketchbook. This last one is published on July 12th of 2021. I am pretty certain I scoured it twice. It's not in the book. There is another anchor punch border in there. And when you go to that blog post, you'll see this one. It was kind of, sometimes when they do the sketches or the borders, they don't all fit in the preview article or the preview of that, the sketches. You'll have to give us a picture of like the different borders they're going to show you. Sometimes they sneak one in there, and that's what this one, I didn't remember seeing this one originally when Seaside came out. But I happened to see it when I was looking through the blog post for a different one. So the other trick I would tell you, if you're familiar with the tool names that are used, you can also search the tool name and border. So I could have done anchor punch border, would pull up all of the borders that they made with the anchor punch. This punch over here was called Camera Love border. So if you know the name of the tool that was featured in the sketch, you can use that also to help you find those different the border posts. So to get started, and the 3 borders I'm going to do today, I am going to be using the same materials for. I'm going to be making 3 borders I'll be able to use in a project that I've got coming up that I'm going to be working on. And the project that I'm working on is actually an 8x8 album. And so what I'm going to be talking about as I'm putting these things together is I'm going to be talking about how I'm going to make some minor adjustments so that I will be able to use these borders in an 8x8 album. Of course, they are size 12 by 12. Or their size for a 12-inch page. But I'll just talk briefly as I'm working through these, how I'm going to make some adjustments so they'll go into an 8x8 album. And the collection I'm working with is I'm working with the, I thought I had, here it is, the Shades of Croptoberfest paper pack. This was a paper pack that was available earlier this fall, it went with the Creative Memories Croptoberfest kit. It has all those lovely browns and burgundies and greens and blues, some nice beige tones in there as well. So I determined I was going to be using this paper pack for my 8x8 project. So I thought I would make these borders to go with that 8x8 project. So I'm working with, this is my primary paper pack that I'm working with. I did pull in some other papers, one of which is going to be a remnant, a scrap I had from Welcome Home. If you are familiar with that paper pack, it has tonal on one side. It has the green kind of architectural details on the back side. The green and blue still go nicely with the Croptoberfest kit. And I have some cardstock that I'm working with. And while most of my paper comes from the Shades of Croptoberfest, I did pull out the olive green leaf paper from the leftover Croptoberfest kit I had. The opposite side has the plaid on it. So that's what I'm working with. Other details I'm working with for punches. I am working with the Home Sweet Home border punch. And the reason I'm using that is because the 8x8 book I'm going to be working on is going to be pictures of the house that we used to have in Arizona. I have some photos of it that I want to put together, a little album that shows that house. We lived there for 14 years, and my older kids remember it. Cody doesn't. We moved when he was 6 months, so he has no idea what our life was like in Arizona. He only knows Washington is home, but my older kids, they remember that house, and so I'll have photos in there of that. And then I'm also using I think this is called the double heart punch. And I'll be showing this one in when we put together the third border. So to get started, after all that there, to get started, we're going to start with the Fall Y'all border. All of these borders I will be making in a horizontal orientation. The way my 8x8 album is going to go together, I think they're going to be best used horizontally. And also the fact I'm using the Home Sweet Home punch, which lends itself to be a little more horizontal than vertical, though how I'm going to put together this border here, it could go vertical if I wanted it to do that. But we're going to be using the Home Sweet Home punch. So this first border will ultimately be rotated horizontal on the page. So one of the techniques they want us to do in here is they talk about, you'll see it actually on step 7, where they would want us to run our fingernail along the edge to give us some distressed looks. I have my tearing tool here to use possibly. The other thing I could also use is a decorative blade. So wherever they talk about, if you're distressing the edge, you may have another way to do it. I mean, they give us everybody theoretically has a fingernail they would be able to run along the edge there, but you may have other options. A decorative blade, the tearing tool, maybe you have the old Creative Memories. I think they had some sort of paper distressor that you would be able to use. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure. I might just go ahead and use the decorative blade because it's just easy. But I also have this, but I might give the fingernail technique a try too. So for this first border, I've got several pieces of paper picked out to work with. And it wants me to have some spare scrap paper here. So I've just got a sheet of white that I'm going to be cutting. You see step 2, cut a piece of cardstock, any shade, to 2 1/4 by 12. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This piece will ultimately be covered up. This is just what we're going to adhere all of our angled pieces to. So 2 1/4 by 12. And then I need 7 pieces of various papers that are going to measure 4 inches by 1 3/4 inch wide. So the papers I'm going to be using, and I need to cut these into the strips. I've got this burgundy, or it's a berry color. The backside has kind of that rock. The blue that has from Welcome Home. The opposite side to that is the green architectural lines. And then I'm going to be using I'm going to trim some of this paper here. It's the wood. It's from the Croptoberfest project recipe kit. Has kind of the blue on the back side, and then this piece here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut each of these 4 strips at 1 3/4 inch wide, and then I'll cut them into 4-inch sections after that. I will be able to use both sides. So I just confirming 1 3/4 inch. That's all the way out to the last solid white line or black line on your trimmer, depending on which, if you have the white trimmer, it's black. On this blue one, it's white. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut those into 1 3/4 inch strips. And then I will, and then from there, I'll cut these down once I've gotten the initial cuts done, the 1 3/4 inch. In my mind, I have a general idea what I want each of these borders to look like, but sometimes until I actually get them put together, I don't 100% know. So I did not build these borders ahead of time. When I did the Halloween Boo at the Zoo ones, I think I made everything ahead of time just to make sure. But this one, I just decided not to. I said, we'll make this work. So here's my 4 pieces. And I put my trimmer away too fast. I now need to cut these into 4-inch segments. So I could stack and cut. Sometimes I don't have the best of luck. I don't think these have to be exactly 4 inches. We will ultimately be cutting off some, of the overhang. So if you stack them and do cut them a little bit off, it's not too big of a deal. All right, so I've got a total, well, I've got more than 7 here. I actually have 8 different patterns that I can choose from. So I'll be able to put 1 of each on here and leaving 1 off. And now here is my, I guess you can't see how messy it is, but it's pretty dirty. My cutting mat. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and just center my strip of paper on the middle here. And if I want to do, I can just start laying these out. And and they want us to put them on at an angle. And what I can do is I can then, since I've got this on my mat here, I could use one of my angle lines here. So I'm going to pick the 30-degree line. And I am just going to start doing a dry fit. Putting these down, you can see here I've got a nice overhang, making sure when I adhere these, ultimately I will have that overhang. And right now I'm mostly going just to get my spacing of my patterns, of my papers. I've got, one that's a little bit more heavy interest of color. I'm not sure I'm going to keep that one in there, but I'm also not sure I'm going to use this brown. And the reason is because I might use the wood tone here on this edge, this brown. I might use it actually as that solid strip there. So I'm not sure, but, oh, I can't forget about my blue and my green. So the angle itself doesn't matter so much. Like I don't have to worry about maintaining a perfect 30 degrees because once I put one piece in place, everything is going to work itself out. It'll work. It'll work out just fine. And what I'm looking here is a balance. Like I think I want to move this blue down, or this berry color down. Maybe I'll put my blues flanking the outside edge. I just need to make sure I cover up all my pieces there. So I think that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go ahead with that as my general premise. And I think I'm going to use repositionable adhesive. It's always a good policy when you're doing something along these lines where you're just maybe going to have to move some things around. I think that's going to work out really well. I'm actually going to go ahead and just put adhesive right on my paper rather than the back side of my piece. That way I'm not worried about anything I overhang. I can just concentrate on getting it right where I need it on the background itself. And once I get the first piece in, everything else should go into place, just butting it right up against it. Make sure you're checking both sides so that you don't have any spots you miss. And this is a great technique that you can use with any of the borders. Like this is just a great base for a border. You could do lots of things once you get this part done. You, of course, wouldn't necessarily have to use 7 different patterns. I could have just cut 2. You could alternate. You could cut, you just see 7 different pieces. Oh, I'm seeing some. Michelle wanted me to put the pebbles between the green and the blue. Well, yeah, I see what you mean, Michelle, about that, just because of I've got a bit lighter here and a little bit lighter there. So, let me see. See, it's so nice. I can just pull everything up, put that right in the middle, separate out those lighter toned pieces. That can be a good principle, just because your eye is always drawn to things that are a little bit lighter. The brightest part of anything that you're looking at, so you're looking at a photograph, you're looking at your layout, more often than not, you're going to be caught by something that's bright. So that's why sometimes when you have photos that are, a little bit lighter, if you're trying to determine how to balance out what you want in your layout, if you've got, a brighter, something bright going on that's not on your photos, it can be a little bit distracting and take away from the photos themselves. All right. So there we go. So yes, Vicki, this would definitely be a great option for scraps. I'm cutting full sheets just because a part of me was a little too lazy to dig through, but I also can tell you, I have not really worked with the shades of Croptoberfest paper, so almost everything in there is going to be working with fresh paper. But if you've got scraps, you've got pieces of mats. Sometimes we have our mats will have different patterns to them. So this is a great way to use up some of those mats. All of the mats are at least 4 inches wide. A lot of them do have solid colors on them, or solid pattern areas. And the thing to keep, sometimes we have those mats are 4 by 6, and they will have a little sentiment in the middle or journaling box, but the edges are open. These are all 1 inch and 3/4. You can use varying sizes. So anytime you have the ability to get that 4-inch long strip, any width, you could hold, this could be varying widths. Just make sure you cover that entire piece of paper. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to flip this over and cut all this excess off. First, I think I'm going to make this easy. I'm just going to cut off the ends because that's going to make it easier. And I didn't do the best job cutting the ends, but for the most part, let me just get this cleaned up. I may have to just use scissors. That's good enough. Get it in there so you can work it in. Use those lines, the cutting lines, line up with the edge. Since I didn't have any adhesive on those pieces, they don't stick to anything. All right. I am seeing that some of you may be having some issues watching this, and I'm so sorry if that's the case. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not seeing anything from my end, but if you are having issues, you can always be able to see the recording later. So I'm really sorry if it's not working out well, but here is the base part of my layout. the border, excuse me. So next we need to go ahead and punch the sunflower pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to punch. They use a sunflower punch. I am going to be using the Home Sweet Home, and I am going to be actually punching this. I'm pretty certain I am using the navy cardstock here, and the reason is it's going to be nice and bold and stand out even against my blue pieces here. Laura, we're not going to talk about my house that was supposed to be clean, because I really, honestly, guys, I thought really long and hard about it. In my mind, I cleaned it all, but I did get some done, but not nearly as much as I had hoped. So I enjoyed being extremely lazy and chatting with my kids. My son, my oldest, actually had his wisdom teeth pulled last week. So it was pretty interesting, that whole debacle. We probably should have filmed him when he came home, but we didn't. But he was pretty funny, pretty miserable. So there's the Home Sweet Home border, and we'll go ahead and give this a quick trim. He wasn't too funny after he got his teeth pulled out. I mean, some of the things he was telling me were pretty amusing. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to, I am going to say he was pretty amusing. Nothing that was really like, America's Funniest Home Videos. A lot of it was you have to know him to really realize how ridiculous he was being. But he came home after that and fell back asleep for like 2 more hours. And then he was pretty swollen, but all in all, it was good. He's got them done. So there you can see I've got my border. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to come in with that warm brown color, and I'm going to cut that piece. It's step 6, and it's going to be cut it to 3/4 of an inch wide. So here's this, we're going to cut it to 3/4 of an inch wide. This is an area if you wanted to use your decorative blade, you could use your tearing tool. Ultimately we will, they do talk about doing a little bit of distress on this if you wanted to. So I'm just kind of envisioning that there. And then I need to have a border that's going to go behind it. So let me move this on to my actual, just onto the tabletop here. You might be able to see it a little better. I need to have a color that actually goes behind this, that also gets that distress treatment to it. And I think I'm trying to think here how I'm going to do this. And I think I'm going to use the navy here. So let me go ahead, and that actually going behind this here, this piece is actually step 1. And the reason I didn't do it, the step 1 first, is because I wasn't sure what color paper I wanted to use. I wanted to get everything put together and that I can make that decision on the back piece. So if I grab my navy, I can just imagine here at the top. And I like that. And I think what I'm going to do, because I'm not sure how much my fingernail, I'll probably get myself a paper cut. If I try to use my fingernail, I have very short nails, to rough that up. I'm going to go ahead and just trim both sides with a Victorian blade to give myself that decorative element. So here's the Victorian blade. Oh, Karen, I'm so sorry to hear about your 20-year-old. The dry socket does not sound fun at all. We were definitely very, kept telling our son, do this, do this, do this, and just try as hard as you can to prevent that from happening. So this piece here, this base border piece from step 1, they want us to go to 2.5 inches wide. And I know it's really hard for some of these kids to, you do what you can, but sometimes that dry socket just comes and gets you anyway. So he was pretty miserable on his one side of his mouth. Chris, it was, you know, I did find out, hey guys, the Vitamix will shred up turkey really, really well. So he had a lot of mashed potatoes with shredded turkey in there, mix on that gravy, and that's how he was enjoying Christmas or Thanksgiving dinner. So, all right, here we go. I like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and adhere these pieces into place. I'm going to use some regular adhesive on the back. Well, I'm doing this wrong because this is the back. Navy is typically a little bit longer. Navy, for some reason, seems to be about an 12 and maybe an eighth of an inch. So I'm going to line up. Of course, now I think my base piece may actually be, or my decorative piece here. Yeah, I'm a little bit long. I didn't get my overhangs cut off as tight as they should have been. So I'm going to clean those up. And just sticking these down. And I think what I'll do is I'll put this one on first, this brown piece. And it's supposed to go all the way to the bottom edge of those angled. So you shouldn't see any of those angled pieces. And then this one top goes up. So I will use repositionable adhesive. And there is going to be border one. So when I'm putting together my album is when I will worry about going in with any embellishments and details to go ahead and add any kind of a title. The album I'm putting together is pictures from my home when it was for sale. So they're like the realtor photos. So it will be probably more just maybe a little title that says which room it is. I'm not going to worry too much about getting too crazy with the titles. The book is pretty straightforward, but there will be room to be able to add those details. So there is border one. That's going to go for that 8x8 album. So then we're going to move on to border number 2. And border number 2, I love this technique where we take our punches and we just do them kind of just randomly spaced all over the place. It's a fun, cute technique to use those punches, you know, give them, and especially the camera punch. I love that one. It has been retired for a while, but if you like the camera look, don't forget we have the photography chain border maker cartridge, which would work fantastic. Doing kind of a similar thing, just punch yourself a chain of those cameras and then cut them apart. There's this one. And guys, this one is on the December deals. If you don't have it already, you can pick it up for $15, which is a smoking deal. You can find that on the Creative Memories website right now. So this is a great one. If you want to mimic this look with the cameras, you could use the photography chain to do so. But I am using, again, I'm going to be using the Home Sweet Home, and I'm going to have little houses all cut out here instead. So in the interest of time, I've already pre-cut a lot of my houses. I am going to be putting them on this from the paper pack. There was this kind of a beigey, crafty color paper that I'm going to be using as my background piece instead of the white that they show in the sketch itself. And I've gone ahead and punched them. You can see here, I've punched them in the brown, the berry, and I used some olive cardstock for that. I did keep the hearts. I'm not sure that I'm going to use them, but I kept them. It's pretty detailed to get those hearts onto the layout, but I did use them just in case, or I kept them just in case. The other color I'm going to use, because I'm going to be using 4 total colors, I am going to use this dark blue as well, but I wanted to go ahead and I thought I'd punch that with you guys. I don't know if you're going to punch with me, or how many of you are working alongside me. This one can be a little bit more, I mean, it took me a while to cut out all those pieces. That's the downside of using a border maker where you have to punch it, then cut all the pieces apart. But I think it's going to be worth it. So I go ahead and punch. And this is the dark blue that was in the Welcome Home. I think it's the decorative paper pack from Welcome Home. Has the blue and green architectural detail on the back. And I'm going to come in here and I'm only giving myself about an 1/8 inch across the bottom. I probably could, the thing with these, if I had cut directly at the very edge, then what I do is I cut off, I don't give myself any base below the windows. You can't cut this directly, just like slice them off. You've actually got to trim it about 1/8 of an inch to give yourself a little bit of room below the window and below the heart. So I'm giving myself an 1/8 of an inch. And I totally did that with my Victorian blade in there. So let me switch that out and redo this. So I see a question about the folder that I have my pieces in here. This is from Stamp and Storage. It's their paper sleeve. I think it's their paper sleeve. It's the one that is open on 2 sides. And I sometimes I get it confused which one it is, but they're fantastic. I keep projects in there as I'm working on them. Pages that I've started that I haven't finished, ideas, kind of like, you know, when you're going to power layout and you're going to put everything together. I oftentimes will use these paper sleeves for that. Like I could shove my photos in there, the 3 or 4 pieces of paper that I want to use, any mats. When Tessa and I are preparing for our page maker classes, I do that, or Power Hour will go in there. So you see Tessa and I use those a lot. They are, like I said, from Stamp and Storage. And if you go to meganandtessa.com, and that's Megan with 2 G's, Tessa with 2 S's, you will see I just posted a blog article about how I use the various Stamp and Storage pieces. And I think I do reference the paper sleeves in there. All right. So there we go. Houses with flat bottoms. That's what I needed. But you can see there that little bit of extra room that you need to give at the bottom to make sure you don't cut off the bottom of the heart, and that the windows aren't sitting directly on the ground. They're windows, not doors. So now what I get to do is come in with my scissors and snip them all off. I am right-handed, so I found for me just how I cut, it was easier for me to cut just to the right of all the houses, and then I'll come over and work from the opposite side and cut that extra piece off. It's just, I can see better to make sure I'm cutting flush with the house. So depending on if you're right or left-handed, it may be different for you, or maybe you can see better on both sides. I can't. I can definitely see better on this side of the scissors. So then I'll just flip it over and cut those pieces. So a little bit of tedious work, but I think it's worth it. So Karen, you're asking about seasonal sightings. Tessa and I did do a class with seasonal sighting. It's on our website at meganandtessa.com. If you go to the shop, so meganandtessa.com/shop, you will see the seasonal sightings class. We did that one a couple weeks ago. There's handouts to make 6. Well, it's more than that because we demonstrate 6 layouts during the class itself. They are 2-page layouts. And then there's instructions in the PDF about how to make 2 more 2-page layouts using the materials in the seasonal sightings decorative bundle. So it's a pretty fantastic class. You can go to the website and check it out. There is the Zoom class recording is included. So we had a lot of fun with that. We'll have another Page Makers class coming up sometime in the new year. We're not sure what. Last year we did Deep in the Woods. That was a collection that Creative Memories released at the beginning of December. This year, I believe we're getting a collection called Silver and Gold that I think next week. So we will see what that collection contains, whether or not we're going to do a Page Makers with that, or if there's something coming in the new year that we'll use. So here's all my blue houses. get those. I'm going to set those up here at the top. And then I'm going to, got some static going on. I have all of my other houses, and I'm just going to scatter those up here at the top. I probably wouldn't have necessarily have put all these punched little things like that. I should have put them like in a little baggie or something else to keep them a little bit more contained. It's that dry time of year where the static is a little bit more out of control. So getting all those. All right, so I just have a few of the hearts in there, and I put all my blue hearts in the trash. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything with those hearts. So for this particular layout, or excuse me, the border, they want us to start with a piece of white cardstock to cut to 2 inches. And I am going to be using not white. I'm using kind of this beigey crafty color. It was one of the papers in the shades of Croptoberfest. So here is the blue on one side and kind of that crafty color on the other. I'm going to cut this at 2 inches. And then it's all about putting these houses on. So if I was if I was Julia Childs, I would have had that moment where I put everything on ahead of time, but I didn't. So you guys have to bear with me for just a few minutes while I start putting these on, and I'm just putting them on randomly. However, I want my borders to go horizontal. So I'm going to rotate everything and put the houses on going horizontal, or so that my orientation of everything is horizontal. I'm not worried about them being straight. They're going to be tilted. It almost looks like, you know, I don't know, something came through and started a little tornado came through and is tossing all my houses around, and that's okay. Obviously, I should make sure some get on completely on the page. I'm going to put on some brown ones and then go in and put in some blue ones. I'm using repositionable adhesive so I can move things around as I need to. I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm just going to get these on the page. Some of this olive cardstock. I really love olive. I would love to see Creative Memories bring us this olive cardstock like all the time. If we could have a paper buffet and have this available, I'd probably buy like 30 packs of it. I love, 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 love the olive color. Some are going to overhang. I'll trim those off. I am trying to get a combination of the hearts and the windows. But right now, really what I'm going to try to focus on is spacing and color. I can move things around if I think that something's like, oh, I have a heart there where it should be a window. Let me move that. Or I can replace it. Like this really probably should be a window. Put this one up here. And I'm just doing my best to get things spaced. I probably will have some extra extra houses left over. I decided to use olive cardstock instead of using the olive paper because the 2 designs of the paper, I thought the pattern was maybe going to be a little bit distracting in the overall design. So I went with the olive cardstock because it was solid. That's just kind of how it worked out. I didn't want to have See, I'm going to have too many hearts, I can tell you, in this spot. But that needs to be a heart. So I'm going to change this one. We'll move this over here. We'll just chop the top off or the bottom off that house. So now what I'm doing is I'm looking at this. I am looking for overall gaps, whether it be colors, just things I think like I need to have something brown here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the house, this brown house, put in place. And then I'll put a green one there. And the green's going to have to be a heart. And honestly, I probably don't need to overthink it too much. It's just a border. I don't know how many people ultimately will even notice. It's like, oh my gosh, she has too many blue houses, or there's too many with windows, or I can see they're a little more clustered down here and they're a little more separated out here. How can I adjust that? Well, let me make some things. Let me make some adjustments. How can I get another house in? Well, let me move some borders around, or move some houses. Yes, this is going to be, I am recording this. So this video, if you have to leave now, that's great. I know sometimes the border classes run just a little bit long, especially when I decide, hey, let's make 3. So if you need to cut out, get on with your day, you will be able to catch this recording later. I'll have it on YouTube. Of course, Facebook will also have it available as you'll just be able to catch it on my Facebook page. So you can definitely watch this later. So I appreciate people who join me live, but I understand that the daytime is hard. I do it because it's evenings are hard for me. So I am going to, I think, call that good. All right. So maybe a little adjustment here. All right. I'm going to clean this up. I'm just going to use scissors rather than trying to do that. I'm just going to come in, cut the tops, and anything that overhangs, just give that a quick trim. And then the rest of this border goes together pretty easily. It's going to be a couple backgrounds that we're going to put on. We're going to cut 2 different colors here. I made notes on that. I'm going to use the berry and the blue to make my background. So there is that piece. So my first background I'm going to use is going to be the blue. And then I will come in, I believe I'm coming in with the berry after that. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. So the blue one, we're coming now down here to step 3, and we're going to do it at 2 1/4 inch. This base beige piece was 2 inches. We're going to go 2 1/4 inch using the straight blade. 2 1/4 inch. That'll go on there. And the next piece we're going to come in and using our decorative blade. They use the stamping blade, but I'm going to use the Victorian blade again. I will probably stick with that blade throughout my 8x8 album project to be consistent between all of the pages. But we're going to go with 2 3/4 inch of the berry color, and I'm going to use the Victorian blade. Switch that there. I need to establish my edge. And then I'm going to cut this. It said, let me double check again, 2 3/4 inch. 2 3/4 inch. I'm going to just make sure that's how wide I want it, because that's going to be quite a bit of the berry showing. They wanted a 2 3/4 inch. I'm going to dial that back a little. I don't want quite as much of that berry. I'm coming back to a little bit closer to 2, well, just over 2 1/2. 2 3/4 was a little bit more of the berry than I wanted, but I'm going to come in just past that 2 1/2. I'm going to go ahead and swap back to my straight blade before I forget for the next project. And now it's a simple stack. This is the beige piece that has all my little houses on it. Goes right down the middle of that blue background. And I see one little house I forgot to cut the top off of. This little berry house. There we go. And then this all gets put down onto the berry border that I cut with the Victorian blade. And yeah, you can see there I didn't, by dialing it back from that 2 3/4 inch, I don't quite have as much of the berry, but I think it's just enough to show through. It's a little bit there. You can see if I angle it towards the light, you can see a little bit more evenly distributed between the amount of blue and amount of berry that's showing. So there is the base border itself. The last detail, and I probably, well, let me just go ahead and do those because I need to see if I'm able to cut some hexagons. So to do that, to cut those hexagons, they want you to use the hexagon from the custom cutting system. And I thought I had this out. Oh, I know where it is. The red blade from the custom cutting system. So let me grab that. The red blade from the custom cutting system to make some hexagons. Now, when they did this for the Picture This collection, there was a title in there that had the, was done in the title sticker that was done with the hexagon. That's what they were wanting you to do it with. However, I do not, I don't know that I'm going to have a hexagon title sticker to go there. So probably what I'm going to do is just cut some hexagons. I'll find some embellishment to go there in the middle. The other thing I want to point out with this is that you don't necessarily have to cut full hexagons. I can't cut a full hexagon. I don't have enough of the blue. So what I'm going to do here is rotate this and cut as much of a hexagon as I can out of this blue piece of paper. And I'll have that available to kind of layer in behind. It obviously won't be my front hexagon, but I'll still be able to incorporate it into the layout or into the border itself. So there's one. You can imagine that could be stacked up there like such. I'll go ahead and cut a full one out of the berry colored paper. And somewhere I have well, I need to cut the brown. I should have the extra olive cardstock, and for the life of me, it's buried under here. It is. Okay. So I'll be able to use the 4 different colors that I used in the layout to make those pieces. I think the brown is going to be the one I would have up front. And to do, if I wanted to, I could just cut the brown with the red blade. And if I'm, wanting to make a small spot to put a title, I could cut the, I'd be able to cut the beige. If I wanted to put a little bit of beige in here, I could cut a smaller hexagon with either the green or the blue blade to be able to do something here if I wanted to have, not layer more onto the brown, but have a lighter background to work with. So that's probably what I will do when I figure out exactly what's going to go on this. Give myself that. There might be something, some sentiment or something in the Welcome Home collection that I can work with. I haven't quite figured it all out yet, but you can see here how this will go. I love the hexagons with it. Of course, you could use other things there. So that's kind of the gist here. Probably what I would do is maybe come in the purple behind or the berry behind. So there we go. And I would probably consider doing a little bit of maybe stitching detail. It really depends on how crazy I want to go with this border. Probably once I get everything build it onto my page, like I said, I'm doing 8 by 8. So I will ultimately be cutting these borders down. And so I'll have to see how it all plays out. But if I was doing on the 12 by 12 page, this is how I would do it. And if I needed to, I mean, all my little houses are done with repositional adhesive. I can move things around. Like now I'm starting to think this little house needs to be a different place. You know, you can play with it a little bit more. So that's the border number 2. So yeah, I see a comment about the circle would look good too. You could use a circle or ovals. I could have done little hearts. Hearts would maybe be a little bit big. I think our templates are a little bit big to cut the hearts, but you could do all sorts of different things there with that. So that's border number 2. So next up for border number 3, so border number 3, we are going to be finding my handout. There it is. So border number 3, as I mentioned, is not in the book. It's the sketchbook, but it is fun. It's relatively easy. You can see it has these strips. It's fairly straightforward to put together. They do, I'm going to talk about one little variation with it that might make it a little bit easier for you, depending on the punch and depending what you need out of this. One of the big things that they do with this project is they tell you that you can, you build the strips on a base piece of cardstock, like we did the very first border, and then you punch from that cardstock. You are then left with these anchor pieces that have that striped effect. That's fantastic if you want to be able to use that anchor punch or that striped anchor that you now have in another project. If you do not care about having those striped punched pieces, there is a simpler way to build this, and that is actually how I'm going to do it, because I don't necessarily care so much to have, I'm using the double heart punch. I don't need so much to have the striped hearts as I do just a little bit of sanity trying to put this piece together. At least that's my plan right now, so we will see. Okay. So coming in here, they have us doing the background piece first is step 1. I am not doing that because I don't know what color I'm going to use yet. Then we're going to go ahead and go to step 2, and we need to cut a background piece. Now for the anchor punch, they recommend using a 2 1/4 inch strip of cardstock in any shade. So I'm going to go back using my white piece that I had. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. I was messing around. I decided to use the double heart punch. If I were to cut this to 1 inch or 2 1/4 inch, my heart will not be centered top to bottom. The way the heart punch works, if I were to worry about doing this, if I was actually punching my piece here, let me just show you. Let me cut this to 2 1/4 inch. The anchor punch, I trust them. I bet this works perfect. The anchor punch is a little bit taller than the heart. So this is 2 1/4 inch. If I then were to slide this in, and remember, I can only go in so far because I'm bound by where the bottom is. So let me punch this and see. I mean, maybe it looks okay. I thought it was, but see there, you can see I have a lot more at the top than I do at the bottom. It's not really centered top to bottom well. I think it works for the anchor punch because the anchor punch is probably a little bit taller top to bottom. So if you're using a punch that is different than the anchor punch, I want you to go ahead and punch on just a piece of cardstock, and then you would use a ruler, measure how far from the bottom of your paper to the bottom of your punch. This is my fixed edge. I cannot get my heart any further from the bottom of the paper because I'm limited by my punch. So I have just over 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to come up here to the top, put my 1/4 inch there, and I can see I'm really close to 2 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and just bump this up to 2 inches. And that's how wide my paper is. So that's something to consider if you're going to use this border and use a different punch than the anchor punch. Maybe you're going to use the deer punch, or you're going to use I'm trying to think what other punches you could use. You could use, you know, any of them. The holly punch, the reindeer punch, the sleigh punch. You just need to know that they have measurements based on the anchor punch. It is easy to determine the measurements based on a different punch. Just use some scratch paper to do so. All right. So with that in mind, I have altered it. Number 2, I'm going to be trimming it to 12 by 2 inches instead of 2 1/4. That does change the number of strips of paper. They wanted us to cut 3/8 inch cardstock or pieces of paper, 6 of them at 3/8 of an inch. I am going to be cutting 8 at 1/4 inch each. So there's my piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and start cutting some pieces. And I think I can get one of this dark blue. Quarter inch is pretty thin. And I'm just going to start cutting some various pieces here. I'll cut 2 of all the colors except for that dark blue just because I didn't have any. I do have some basalt cardstock, which is a really similar kind of a dusky blue. So if I wanted to, I could still use the green pattern side and then use the basalt instead of the blue. We will see how this works out. I also just might use some of this beige, this crafty color. I'll cut 2 of those. And then I will cut a couple of the berry pieces here. So I think maybe I have 8. I think I might be short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need more, and I'm going to use this color, this green, and I'll cut a couple of those. Now this particular design or this particular one is going to use a lot of adhesive, especially if you plan to punch out your, if you plan to punch, you've got to use a lot of adhesive, because if you do not use a lot of adhesive to adhere these strips, you can only imagine I'm going to have this piece right here would theoretically have all sorts of striped paper on it. How many little pieces that's going to take to cover that? If I do not have adhesive in all of my across this, I'm going to have some significant issues. So I'm so sorry if you guys are having issues with the feed here. I'm hoping that the recording is good. Just keep trudging along. So I'm going to put a lot of adhesive on here. and hope for the best, right? That's what I'm going to do. This is 2 inches. So Laura, I'm glad that it's working well for you. I'm going to hope that that's carrying through for everybody. I'm going to start with this blue in the middle. And these should be about 1/4 of an inch. I look like I might be a little bit shy of 1/4 of an inch. That could be interesting. And I'm just using the strip here, and I'm going to try to put it right down the middle. And now as I put all these other ones in place, I'm just going to butt them right up against each other. Well, I learned my lesson before. Let's get some of these, the patterned paper in here. The lighter. Get a solid. Just keep on putting those in there. It's a little bit of work. I can definitely tell I'm going to have some issues at the end here with my adhesive, so I'm going to run some more on here. I see gaps. I do not want my strips falling out. So this is where I get up here. Now I'm trying to make the decision based on what I have. I really wish I had another piece of that blue, but I'm going to bring up another berry color. So I'm going to go back to my papers. There it is. And cut another 1/4 inch strip of the berry. Nope, I'm going to put in okay, guys, this is me making this work. I really want this blue. I really, really, really do, but I don't have enough of it to make a 12-inch strip. But what I can do is piece it together. I don't think it's going to make a big deal because I ultimately am going to be cutting this border in pieces anyway. I'm going to be cutting them into 2 6-inch pieces. So what I'm going to do is put together 2 6-inch pieces so that when I cut it in half, you won't even know. All right, so I've got 2 strips. The first one I cut there wasn't very good. And I'm just going to come in like this. Here's the 6-inch mark. So I want the berry. I want the brown. I need a strip of the brown. I want to bring the brown in, and then I'll bring in that blue. Putting more adhesive on. Never have too much adhesive for this particular one. Bring in the brown. And I'm going to bring that berry back in. I ended up not using any of the beige, but that's okay because then I can just maybe use the beige in the layout itself. So then what I'll do here, as you can see, I've got I'm going to add blue here, but like I said, I'm cutting this in half at 6 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and start it here at the 6-inch spot and come over. And I'll start this other one at 6 inches. You can hardly see it. I mean, if I was doing a 12-inch, I would still probably do it this way. Get that blue in there. I love the blue. And then just trim this. And I've got some white sticking here that I might need to clean things up with my trimmer, maybe shorten it or narrow it down just a little bit. I'll clean that up later. I have just a little bit of, I probably should have cut things just a little more generous than the 1/4 inch. But now, depending on what I wanted to add this to. So I'm thinking I'm going to do, I want something that my hearts are going to stand out, that my cutouts. I want, maybe a nice dark color here. I'm looking around for my navy cardstock. I don't have enough of that sheet left. Okay, so now here's the deal. I think, what I need to do, I'm going to use the navy because I like that it's bold, it's dark, but I need to pull up that dark, the last strip I added. So, repo adhesive, pull that up. I have a berry strip I'm going to put there instead. All these strips are 1/4 inch. So yes, I am doing an adjustment based on my punch. As I mentioned, my heart punch that I'm using for this is not wide enough, or not tall enough, I guess, to be able to do what they do with the anchor punch. So I had to adjust the overall width of my border so that when I punch my hearts, they will punch to be, in the middle. I didn't, before, they don't punch right. They are too short. It's too narrow. I can't find my example piece, but I explained it just a little bit earlier that the heart, you can see here, if you do 2 1/4 inch, like they wanted you to do, the heart is not centered. The anchor would have been because it's taller, but the heart is not. So I needed to bring down my overall width of my border to 2 inches tall, and 1/4 inch was the easiest way to do it. So, okay, so there's my piece there, my border piece here, my background. I am going to do the background. I made notes. I'm going to cut my background at 2 1/4 inch, or 2 1/2 inch. I am going to give myself a little bit of a generous on both sides, a nice deep blue on both sides, 2 1/2 inches. I'm going to use the Victorian blade for that. So I need to start my edge. And it needs to be 2 1/2 inches. 2 1/2. So you can see how that's going to go on as such. Now, the cheating way to do this, the different way, the alternative method to do this, if I did not care about my striped punched out pieces, if I didn't want to use those for a different project, what I could do is just adhere this in place, grab my navy cardstock, I have some scrap of it here, and I could punch some hearts. I might even be able to punch it from my background piece if I was certain that it was going to cut and give me enough space that I thought I could come in here and still, I probably would be able to punch it without problems from this background. And then I could just evenly space all of my navy hearts all the way across. It's a little bit of a different look in the sense of when you punch from it, you have, these pieces here are going to stand out. And maybe, if I wanted to punch it out, maybe I want the whole heart to be there, like such. Maybe I want the whole heart have big hearts across here, right? So that's going to be to your discretion. You do not have to punch your pieces out. You can just, whatever background you pick here, just punch with that and layer those on top. You might notice the difference, but honestly, probably no one else is going to. Now, what we'll do here is I am going to go ahead and punch and hope for the best out of my background here. And I'm going to show you, they want you to space these 5 punches spaced evenly across. I am cutting this border in half at 6 inches. I'll have 2 3-inch sections that I put on my 8x8 borders, or 8x8 pages. So I actually need 3. Imagine this cut in half, and I need 3 on each side. I have already worked out the math, and I need to punch once. I need to punch 6 different times, and I'm going to punch at all of the odd numbers. So on the back side, I can come here on my cutting mat, and I'm going to punch. Let's come up here to the top. Here's 0 on this side. If I bring this up here to the top, I'm going to punch at 1, 3, and 5. Again at 7, 9, and 11. That will give me 6 evenly spaced hearts. I will be able to cut my entire thing down the middle here at 6 inches and have everything evenly spaced. So now comes the fun part. It doesn't matter to me which is top and bottom. I'm going to leave my the mark here so I can see it. It actually kind of does get tucked in there. Inside here, there is one that is in the middle. There is one of these little grooves, these reinforcement pieces. One of them is middle. I'm going to mark it so it's easy for me to keep track of with a Sharpie. And that's where I'm going to line up my black mark. It's in there. It's tucked in there. I have to look in, okay? I am looking down the middle of this and making sure that my black mark lines up in the middle. Carefully set it down, and I'm going to punch. There's my heart. There's my little heart. All that adhesive I put on so far is holding. I'm going to repeat that 6 times. Double check when you pull these out, double check, because this is the time where you need to check to make sure if you're losing any pieces before you start getting too many small pieces. Oh, see, I lost a piece. I lost a piece right here. I can see I lost a piece. I'm going to come in with my adhesive and put it back. So I think if you do that as you're punching, you double check, like there's another piece. This is obviously a spot where my adhesive was not very strong or I didn't have enough of it put in place. You can catch all those small pieces. But definitely, this is the time after you punch every one of them, double check. Because it's easier to keep track of which pieces go to, which pieces it fell off, which one goes to which punch. One more. Thank you guys so for doing that. Or for hanging in here with me while I do this. I see a comment about whether or not turning over the punch. The issue with the double heart is that you're only seeing a really small piece in there. So I probably could have, if I had made my line all the way down. If you're going to use the back side of the punch, you probably would have had to I would have had to go all the way across so that when I put it in here, I could see that line coming through. So if you do want to turn it over and do that, but just make sure you have the line all the way down the middle. Okay. So Kathy, give that a shot if you want to do it. So I've got all those pieces. Let me get this adhered and we'll get this one wrapped up. A little bit of a longer session. Thanks. Like I said, thanks for hanging in there while we're putting these together. 3 borders, may be a little bit ambitious for today's Scrapbook Live. Oh, I got to clean up just a little bit. I've got some white showing. Before I adhere this, I am just going to go ahead. I don't think anybody's going to notice if I clean things up a little bit. So there you can see. And then what I'll do is I will come in and put those hearts in place, the small heart, the bold pieces here. Now I do have, because I went ahead and did that, I now will have the opportunity, if I want to use these other hearts as part of my 8x8 album, these hearts here, I'll be able to put those together. So let me just give you a better idea what they look like. You can see those when they're on a darker piece. So it is fun if you want to be able to have that extra bit to be able to use to go ahead and do the adhering, but use tons of adhesive to make sure those pieces all stay. And then of course, these pieces all come here in the middle to finish out the hearts. So here are my 3 borders. When I have everything put together as part of my 8x8 album, I will be able to share the full details of everything. But as you can see, just, you know, lots of fun to put together. I'll get everything put as part of those 8x8s. I should hopefully have that for you to share. By the middle of December, I'll have that album more put together. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And like I said, hopefully, just thanks for following along. I know it was a long one, and if we had some glitches there, I'm really, really sorry about that. So I do have just a quick word. There'll be an announcement coming later today, but just to let you guys know, in 2023, I am going to be stepping away from Creative Life Scrapbooking, which is kind of that design team that I'm on. They're the Creative Life Scrapbooking page. They do the 2 times a week. You'll see the Feature Project Fridays, the Border Maker Mondays. We do the PJ parties together. So just from a time standpoint, it was one of those things that kind of, you know, things start to add up and you kind of have to figure out, you know, to like prioritize things a little bit. And so one of the things was for 2023, I am stepping away from that. I am still going to be doing Scrapbook Lives. I'm still doing Power Hours with Tessa. I am going to be doing all the videos and the virtual crop stuff. All that is still going to happen. Where I won't be participating, or where you will not see, I will no longer be having things that are shared on the Creative Life Scrapbooking Facebook page, and I will not be participating, or I won't be a designer on the PJ parties that they do 4 times a year. So there'll be more information coming out about that later today from the Creative Life Scrapbooking page itself. I'll have some details coming out too on how things are going to look for the in 2023. So it's going to be fun, exciting for them. I just will not be. That's not going to be a place where I will be active, but I still will be active on my page, in my group, Power Hours, Page Makers, Scrapbook Lives. Like I said, all of those things are definitely going to be continuing. So I look forward to 2023. I'm super excited about what's going to be coming. But I just want to let you guys know, you'll see more details about that coming out, I believe later today. So Next week, we'll be doing another Scrapbook Live. We will have, I think, 3 more. And then I am going to be taking 2 weeks off the last 2 Wednesdays in December for holidays and just doing some fun stuff with my family. My son will be home from college. And then we'll be picking it up again in the new year. So basically, once I get my kids back in school. After the first of the year, we'll have all the fun stuff there. So I'll have more details coming out soon with what our project will be for next week. But we will be diving back into probably another layout idea from the Creative Memories blog. In the meantime, everybody have a fantastic week. Hopefully you stay warm. Hopefully you stay not iced over and windy and nasty. I am really sorry for anybody who gets any of this cold, snowy junk coming out of Pacific Northwest, but it's winter, I guess. We're just have to get used to it. All right, everybody take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.